Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we have a really fun round of models to take a look at. Some brand new ones from Haolonggood, as we have the Dilophosaurus pair, and not just one, we've got two, so we've got four Dilophosaurus all together. You can see we've got both of the different versions here to take a look at, and you'll notice that the image on the front is a little bit different than what we usually get, and it seems like Haolonggood is just kind of like playing with ideas basically at this point, because sometimes they'll include like the skeletal reconstruction of a dinosaur, other times they'll show a nice image of the dinosaur. This time we have images of all of the different variants on the front of the box, but they're kind of darkened, so they're a little harder to see, which is kind of interesting. It sort of is almost like a surprise then when you open it up to really get a good look at what the actual figure looks like. But on top of, again, you can see the boxes are the same, but on top of the image that we have on the front, you can see an image up here on the top that shows off a whole bunch of different releases that are out already from Haolonggood, which honestly is so impressive. When you look at just this image alone, you can see so many different species here. Like, if you just look at what we have going on, basically we've got like sauropods, we have ankylosaur species, we have ceratopsian, stegosaur species, theropods, and I like how they do like 2, 2, and 2. That's pretty neat, the way that they did that. And again, on the side, you've basically got the Haolonggood image, same thing over on the other side, and then when you flip it around again, you're going to have the same image basically on both sides as far as that goes. So, as always, I'm really excited to take a look at these. Let's pop these boxes open and check them out. So here is one set of these Dilophosaurus. You can see we've got, again, whoop, it fell. So let's get it to stand. There we go. You can see we've basically got a seated version of a Dilophosaurus and a standing version. This is the kind of flashier, as far as the paint schemes go, version, because we have this really neat looking bluish one. The other set here, I believe, the colors are a little more dull, but still really quite nice. Again, we've got the seated version, and then you've also got, again, the standing version, of course, just like we have with the other ones. And my camera's not focusing correctly. There we go. And you can see they do all look really cool, and it's definitely neat to have 4 Dilophosaurus overall, and I was a little unsure how far off the coloration was between the standing one from this group compared to the standing one from this group, but here in person I can say the coloration is actually quite different. What I do like about this one, even though the colors are a bit more dull, I still think it's a very realistic coloration, but they have like the same tones of colors kind of for them, but just really slight differences. Like the patterning is a little different, the coloration of the feet is a little different, so it's like really subtle differences between the two, whereas it's a lot more obvious the differences between color when it comes to these two. So I don't know, I guess it really depends on your take as far as what would be natural, but I think they honestly, both sets look absolutely fantastic if you ask me, so let's go ahead and jump to a closer look and check them out from there. So if we begin with the flashier pair, straight away you can see the coloration of this one is excellent. I am a massive fan of the coloration on this one. If you get nice and close, you can see that we've got a gorgeous head sculpt for the Dilophosaurus. And one thing that I immediately love about all of these figures, because unlike normal Haolonggood where they choose one and not the other, every single figure in this group seems to have this dark wash, and I cannot tell you how pleased I am by that, because I think the dark wash just adds so much realism to the figures and just amps up the paintwork in a really beautiful way. And you can see Haolonggood is perfect when it comes to applying this dark wash, where it gives the dinosaur a little bit of a dirty look and also just highlights the detail in a really realistic way. You know, I don't think the dark wash is too intense or anything, which is always a great thing. And you can see another thing you may notice about this is the fact that we don't have lips for our Dilophosaurus. I think at one point there was conversation of them having lips, but for some reason they actually don't. And they don't have an articulated jaw or anything either, which was a little surprising. I kind of expected them to. But outside of those issues, you can see that is an absolutely gorgeous head sculpt for a Dilophosaurus. Incredibly nice looking skin texture, incredibly nice looking paintwork. Again, you've got a nice light tone there for the face. It very gradually and smoothly transitions up as you lead up into the crest of the Dilophosaurus to a really beautiful orangish tone. You can also see some darker tones kind of leading up there along the top of the crest and kind of designing down, definitely giving it a bit of a flashy look. The eyes are painted beautifully. They may actually be the nicest looking eyes I've seen on any Haolonggood release up until this point. You can see that there's also a nice gloss coat to the eyes as well, making those shine very realistically. The teeth look like they might be slightly sloppy, but just barely for the most part. They're very well done, I think, and you can see how small the head sculpt is, so they're pretty impressive when it comes to the painting department. As you lead back here a little bit further, you can see the ears show up right there. It's also nicely defined with a darker tone. You can see some ridges there along the top of the neck, moving down the course of the neck as they decrease a little bit, moving down, completely disappearing as you get further down. You can also see the detailing on the inside of the crest also looks nice. If my camera would focus on it a little bit better, it definitely looks really good. For some reason, does not want to go in there. But as we lead back into the neck, you can see this really cool greenish tone pickup. It's a really nice light green, and I absolutely love that coloration, as well as the blue as we move further back. You can also see a nice light tone here, kind of like an off-white here, for the underside of the lower jaw leading down into the throat. The throat itself is also really nicely sculpted, and you can see again how that dark wash makes all of the skin texture pop beautifully. Also a really smooth transition from that light tone to the green up here. You also see some patterning picking up as you move down. You've got like some dark browns as you move through, and they continue to kind of pattern and design down. As you lead into the body a little further, you can see an extraordinarily smooth transition from the green to the blue, which looks really nice. As you lead down here into the arms, you can see that there are a few kind of osteoderms poking up here and there, as well as some really nice, very reptilian scale detail moving down the course of the arm down into the hands. You can see the fingers look really good. You can also see the nails are sculpted quite nicely and painted with a black, it looks like. You can see, except for this one has like a little extra plastic on it, but for the most part you can see a genuine sharp look to them. A little bit of a darkening to the coloration as you move down there into the hand as well. You can see a little bit of the stomach right there, but the legs for the most part are obscuring it because this is again the seated version of the Dilophosaurus. As you move up, you can see some skin wrinkles right there in front of the thigh, again showing off that seated motion. And you can also see all of the osteoderms and stuff here moving through the course of the body, picking up really nicely. And you can also see how nice that skin texture and scale detail really pops as you move through. Very impressive looking, and the subtle patterning is a really nice touch. I just like how it's not really dark or anything. It's just kind of like softer patterning, looking really, really natural on the figure as a whole. You can also see that we've got some nice muscle definition. Again, a really smooth transition to a lighter tone as you move further back into the thigh, again down into the underside of our Dilophosaurus. You can also see the nice positioning of the legs. Very bird-like, I would say, as far as the way, almost like very emu-like, as far as, when you see an emu sitting on eggs and stuff or sitting over the babies, it's kind of like that same sort of seated position and appearance for the Dilophosaurus. As you move down here into the foot, you can see some nice scoots running down the front of the foot, down into the toes. You've also got some nicely painted nails, again with a nice glossy black. And then as you move out here through the length of the tail, you continue to have some more of that patterning moving out. You've got a really nice long curve to the tail, which also looks really good. It's not overly curved or anything, so that's also a really nice addition to the model. You can see the cloaca, which is also again highlighted with that darker tone. As you move through, the detailing of the underside looks great. And then again, you're going to see pretty much the same thing on the opposing side. That head sculpt looks absolutely gorgeous. Again, that eye paint is just so perfect. It's so nicely applied. And one thing I can say that I really do like about this is you can see a little difference when it comes to the coloration here on this side of the crest. You can see that that darker tone runs over the top of the crest, but it doesn't stripe down the way it does over here. And I think that is pretty neat, because a lot of the time you'll get dinosaur models where they try to stay very consistent to the appearance of the patterning from one side to the other, and that's not always the way it works when it comes to stuff like this. So I like the fact that it's a little bit different on one side from the other. As you move down the course of the neck, though, you can see the head is turned away from us, but it's not a massively sharp turn that it's going to cause a huge difference in the detailing department. You can also see some wrinkling here in the bottom of the neck as you lead into the body, on the top of the body again. Everywhere else looks pretty close to the same. The arms are positioned in pretty much the same way. The legs are definitely positioned pretty much the same way. And the tail, for the most part, is fairly, straightforward, leading out just a slight curve. But that is an absolutely incredible looking Dilophosaurus, and easily one of my favorite now in my collection. And then we've got the mate to this particular version of the Dilophosaurus. Now you can see that the head sculpt is pretty much the same. I don't notice any massive differences between the two. If we bring the other one up, you can see basically what they look like in comparison to each other. Actually, the crests are a little bit different now that I look at them. I didn't notice that before. So the crests are shaped a little different from one to the other, I guess from one sex to the other sex, making this obviously have a little difference between the two. Another thing you'll notice between the two different sexes is the fact that there's kind of like some jagged skin here on the underside of the throat moving down, whereas we don't have that on the seated version. I don't notice much difference other than that, but that is really cool. Definitely a really nice touch on the part of Haolonggood to do something like that, to show just again a little bit of difference visually, not just through the paint apps between a male and a female. You can also see that the teeth are again pretty nicely painted. I think they're painted a little nicer on this one. We've got a darker tone as you lead toward the snout on this one. Very nice, kind of like purplish tones as you lead up into the crest of this Dilophosaurus. Not nearly as flashy when it comes to the coloration as the other one, but you can see again the eye paint is beautifully done. Very nice bluish coloration, just like the other one. But you can also see again we have that nice dark wash on this one, just adding a little extra color variation. You can see some of that same sort of purplish tone that you see up there in the crest leading back here into the neck. Again, we have those ridges there leading off of the back of the neck. This time, rather than a patterning kind of moving down in like a striping that way, we have a striping leading off of the back. So a little bit different when it comes to the patterning of this one. We have some really nice tones of color for this one, as well as you have like a very interesting sort of a greenish tone moving through the majority of the body, and then this striping is a dark brown. And again, they've applied that striping so smoothly, it just looks absolutely phenomenal when it comes to the application of the paint. And there's quite a bit of it. You can see as you move through, there's kind of like spots and random areas of that, you know, darker tone picking back up and showing up as you move through the course of the body of the Dilophosaurus. It does have its head turned toward our right again, so you're going to see a little difference on the other side, but nothing too major. You can see the detailing of the underside of the throat and neck, and everything looks really good. As you move down, you can see the arms are very nicely sculpted. Same style, of course, as far as the skin texture. Again, that very reptilian scaling as you move down into the hand of the Dilophosaurus. If my camera would just focus on it a little better to show it to you, there you go. Again, the nails painted with a nice glossy black, that dark wash really making all of the detail pop. And then as you move back here, you can see how this leg is kind of outstretched as the Dilophosaurus is taking a step, walking along. You can see the skin stretching off of the stomach right there. Again, a really nice smooth transition to the coloration of the underside of the Dilophosaurus. You can see the muscle definition moving down in both the thigh and calf, the kneecap present. Nice curves to the toes here as the dinosaur's taking a step and the foot's leaving the ground. You can see the nails again are painted with a nice glossy black, and yes, we do have dew claws. And then we lead up here and you can see again a really nice curve to the tail, but nothing too overly flashy. But I do like that we end the tail here with that darker brown pretty much overtaking it. As we lead out, we have that nice striping moving through the course of the tail. Again, you have the cloaca and everything here on the underside of the Dilophosaurus. Everything looks great as you move through the underside as well. And again, you're not going to see too much difference, just like with the other one on this side, because we don't have any kind of crazy, super dynamic poses or anything. So obviously we have a turn in the neck and everything away from us, but it's not a massive difference from one side to the other. And as you move back, you can see the arm is in a little bit of a different position, but not super far off from what we had seen on the other side. Obviously the foot is planted here, so that is definitely one difference. And you can see that the leg transitions to a very dark tone as you move down there into the foot on this side. So, you know, of course both sides, but on this version of the Dilophosaurus, and then again you lead out into the tail. But that is definitely a really beautiful version of the Dilophosaurus as well. And then you've also got this version, which is the alternate paint variant. Now this one, for the most part, they have darker tones overall. The flashiest areas on these guys would be the fact that you have these really nice oranges here in the face, up in the crest, and you can see how the dark brown kind of leads down and like stripes down into the crest of the Dilophosaurus, which does look really cool. But as you move back, you can see you have like a mixture of like almost like a purplish brown. It's a very interesting tone of color as you lead down through the course of the neck. The sculpts are of course going to be the same on both of these. There's no difference between the sculpt of this pair and the first pair we had taken a look at, so that's something to keep in mind, which means we don't need to go over the sculpt again. You can see the orange is really quite vibrant on the upper part of the crest as you lead down into the neck. Again, it starts to taper away and disappear. And then as you move through the course of the body on this one, you basically just have those dark tones really, really lightly patterning through. Again, you can see that nice striping effect as you move through, similar to the standing version on the other one, but obviously just very different tones of color. But one thing that is really cool is as you lead down into the hands, you can see we transition, if my camera would focus on it, transition to a really cool blue for the hands, so adding a little bit of flashiness to the figure. Same thing happens as you lead down into the foot. You can see we get that really cool bluish tone picking up for the feet of the Dilophosaurus on this version as well, which is a really interesting way to add some flashiness to the figure. But outside of that, when you move through the rest of the body, it looks pretty much just like it does elsewhere. Again, there's not too much going on when it comes to variation of color, but it does look really good, and yet again is tied together very nicely with that dark wash. And then when you bring up the alternate paint variant, they're very similar. The tones of color for the overall body is extremely similar. I don't know that they're any different at all, honestly, when it comes to the primary body color. But we have that same sort of patterning as we did with the other one that was kind of seated, where you have like that striping that sort of moves out this way toward the figure, or through the course of the figure, rather than striping along the back. So we've kind of copied and replicated that same patterning, just very different tones of color. The color of this one very closely resembles the standing version that comes with this, but you can see that rather than just a pure orange crest, we have a little yellow in this one as well. As you lead down, you can see it's really smooth when it comes to the transition there between the yellow. Again, that dark wash is really nicely applied, and you can even see a little bit of a set and shine for the teeth, I think, as you kind of, turn the figure and let the light hit it. Of course, those really nice blue eyes are in this one again. You have the orange moving down across the back of the neck, but you can see the yellow showing up here on the center of the frill on the upper side of this one. Now, one thing about the other one that you noticed was you had those really cool blue hands and blue feet. This time, as you move down, you actually have orange on the hands, especially on the undersides of the hands. You can really see it's very vibrant orange. It's on the upper side as well, but not quite as vibrant. It's almost applied in sort of like a wash sort of fashion on the upper side, so it's there, but it's just not super obvious. The feet, though, don't include that orangish tone. As you move down, you can see the feet are basically just a really dark tone, and we don't have that orange for the underside of the feet either. But you can see, again, moving through the underside, we do have a lighter tone down here. Yet again, that really nice dark wash. And that's probably all you're really going to see when it comes to the paint apps of this version of the seated Dilophosaurus. I don't really notice much of anything else going on color-wise that differentiates this from the other version. But even though these aren't as flashy as the first two we had taken a look at, these as well are excellent Dilophosaurus models. But honestly, looking at these together, I feel like they really look so cool together when you have all four. The entire group of Dilophosaurus just look fantastic, displayed all together like this. As far as a size goes, for a length on the standing version, you are looking at about, from the tail to the snout, about 19 centimeters or around 7.5 inches. Height-wise, I don't know if the head or the tail would be the highest point, but to the top of the head, you're looking at a little over 2.5 inches, or right around 6.5 centimeters. Lengthwise, for the crouching seated version, I'd say about 20 centimeters, or a little under 8 inches. And then for a height to the top of the head, this one obviously is sitting, so it's a little bit shorter, about 2.5 inches, or around 6.5 centimeters for a size comparison. There is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Dilophosaurus, Robert Muldoon, and of course the Collect A human being stepping in here next to our quadruple Dilophosaurus, and you can see that again they are very nicely sized, pretty much where you would expect them to be when it comes to a Dilophosaurus. This is pretty much exactly where I expected them to be size-wise. And then if we take two of them out, keep two of them in, and bring in a Mattel Velociraptor and Dilophosaurus, you've got a pretty good idea, I again, I think of the size here next to these two. Obviously, the Dilophosaurus from Haolonggood here are a bit on the smaller side compared to the Mattel version of the Raptor and Dilo. We've also got the Schleich Safari LTDU Tyrannus, and Collect Day Deluxe Dimetrodon stepping in here for another comparison. Then for a fun comparison, we have the super old version of the Safari LTD Dilophosaurus, which you can very clearly see isn't quite the same size as this Haolonggood version. We've also got what I would say is probably the most iconic version of the Safari LTD Dilophosaurus here next to the Haolonggood version, which you can see these two are pretty similar in size, really not far off at all. As well as the really nice version from Collect Day. However, I will say, undoubtedly, I think Haolonggood here has outdone Collect Day when it comes to their Dilophosaurus, which is pretty impressive because it's not too often that I think a company can outdo something Collect Day has done. So definitely kudos to Haolonggood for pulling off such a gorgeous version of a Dilophosaurus. And then we've also got the Papo version here hovering over the Haolonggood version, though this is a much older repainted version that I had done a long time ago, so it's not the greatest repainted version of a Dilophosaurus, but this is basically just to bring it in and show you again what the size is roughly next to the Papo version if you happen to have that one in your collection. So these brand new Haolonggood Dilophosaurus models are both fantastic. Well, I shouldn't say both, all four are fantastic. So no matter what pair you go with, it's really, a win either way, because if you like the kind of more dull sort of natural colorations, you have the pair that is more dull and kind of natural. You know, there's not a whole lot going on with those outside of the flashiness in the crests, even though it looks really good. You do have a little flashiness in the hands and stuff, but overall, they're pretty much, what I would expect to see on the coloration of a dinosaur like this. And of course, the sculpts are fantastic. Some people might be a little iffy about the fact that they didn't include lips on these, but I think they look great with or without lips. They're definitely two of my new favorite, or four, I should say, of my new favorite Dilophosaurus in my collection. I would say actually my favorite overall, potentially. When it comes to more accurate interpretations of Dilophosaurus, these are as top-notch as you are going to find. And then you also, of course, have the little bit flashier, a little bit brighter versions, but at the same time still extremely natural. They took some flashy colors on those, but they didn't, overdo it. They didn't make them obnoxiously bright or anything to the point where I would say they don't look lifelike or realistic. They still 100% look like living, breathing Dilophosaurus, and absolutely the type of color I could see on this species. And they've done a great job of differentiating a male from a female, as well as, of course, applying that dark wash, which I am such a massive fan of, and the fact that they've done that on all four here was a great decision on the part of Haolonggood. I really think it just amps up the realism of these figures drastically. So again, it is a really nice addition to the Haolonggood line. Honestly, I would say one of the best additions so far, and potentially my favorite figures to come from Haolonggood overall. And that's pretty impressive when I think these might be a little bit higher on my love list to Haolonggood compared to the Carnotaurus, which I absolutely adore. I think I might like these even a little bit better. So if you are interested in grabbing yourself a pair of these Dilophosaurus, or all four, I will include a link in the description to where I purchased mine from, Lana Time Shop. So make sure you check that link, go grab these awesome Dilophosaurus, and also like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.